Let's queer up education. Montana State University being investigated for ignoring threats to queer-straight alliance. Montana State University is under investigation by the U.S. Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights for discrimination for failing to respond appropriately after the Queer-Straight Alliance received threats, including a death threat, last semester. A letter from the Office of Civil Rights said the federal agency received more than 20 complaints alleging the Bozeman campus failed in its response to reports of harassment based on sex, race, color, and national origin. The Queer-Straight Alliance provides support for LGBTQ+ students at MSU, the state's largest public university. The organization received a death threat in February for a queer-friendly dance party it promoted in town, and later a harassing message. In an email to the Daily Montanan, MSU said law enforcement found the threats were not credible threats of violence, and the off-campus event took place without an incident. However, the Office for Civil Rights letter to MSU President Waded Cruzado said it would investigate allegations of the university discriminating against students and faculty by failing to respond appropriately to reports of harassment. Title IX of the 1972 Federal Education Amendments and Title VI of the Civil Rights Act prohibit discrimination at universities receiving federal money. Yeah, that's really bad. The first thing that I think of, because the other major problem that we have in this country is gun control, and the lack of it, the complete lack of it. And it's pretty scary to just be a really young person, a student, to be trying to like carve their way. First time they might be coming out even as a queer person, and they're having to deal with death threats and possible gun violence like at such a young and tender age. Yeah. It's a terrible thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've been to 45 of the 50 states, and having never been to Montana, I feel confident in my decision to exclude it from my list.
No, I couldn't disagree with you more.
You want to go to Montana?
We need to go. We need to support all of our queer brothers and sisters wherever they are, because we've got a great community here, but their community is not even being backed up by their university or their law enforcement. Because you got to remember, I want to know, when were they at least told of these threats? When did they find out about them? When did they give them to administrators? Because clearly the administration said that they're not going to do anything. And colleges and universities don't want to report things like death threats against any of their organizations or their students. When I was in college, I was a huge thing. It was the early and mid 90s. But, you know, there was a big thing about, and I wouldn't be surprised that it still goes on, about sexual assaults that were underreported. Because you can complain to your RA in the dorm, and then they might call campus police. Campus police don't have to respond. There are more rules now, but they didn't have to respond to until regular police or the state police. So that way reporting is down, and they look like they're a much safer institution than they already are. This is playing with fire. Yeah. This is just playing with fire. We do mass shootings too often. Among those are LGBTQ plus related. We're going to have Trans Day of Remembrance next month, where we're going to remember trans women, trans brothers and sisters, but mostly trans black women who are murdered. They are the top demographic for being murdered just for being who they are. So for the university to just say, no, not a big deal. No, it's a very big deal, because you're right. 998 out of 1,000 threats are going to be empty. But it's the two that aren't empty. And you're willing to play that type of roulette with your student body. And that's sick, and it is a critical mission failure.
They're exactly the people that I think these safety protocols were made for, because they are the most vulnerable. We're meant to have, you know, law enforcement and just like, you know, all the protocols and the rules, the laws to support people like elderly folks walking down the street, like speed limits, like this is included in that. You have to help the vulnerable, and I don't feel that kind of way in this society at the moment, especially how vicious it is right now politically. But a lot of people are just like apathetic, or they're like, nah, don't worry about it. But it's a very serious thing. It's still very big in the queer community. Like, there's a lot of violence regardless, any LGBTQ person, and that's what these protocols were for. And it's kind of ridiculous that they're not, you know, doing what they're meant to be doing.
But I think about every year they put out the list of the most LGBTQ plus friendly schools. and the least friendly schools. And I'm not sure what the school status was before this, but I'm sure they've now fallen in that list. And they're probably on the least friendly list.
Well, hopefully they will take it as an opportunity to say, "Oh, we messed up."
That's the thing. I don't want to speak too negatively, because here's things that we're not talking about. One, they actually have a gay straight alliance. That's progressive. Two, they had an event that took place without incident. That's also fantastic. So there are growing pains that happen, especially in rural communities where they don't have access to information as readily as our community here in South Florida is. So let's acknowledge the growth that is there, and let's hope that this is the only negative piece of publication that you guys get from this, and you guys actually do take the time to grow and learn from this and actually do what you are doing, which so far has been progressive, and I want to give you credit for that. Please don't ignore the threats. I'm glad it went off without any violence. I'm sure we all are. But let's not take that for granted, and just make sure that your operating procedures are up to scratch.